For 19 years on NCIS, am I right? Harmon played Gibbs, who is in charge of a group of special agents looking into crimes in the military. We are now in NCIS Origins. It's been almost 20 years since Mark Harmon took over as the steady anchor boss, irreplaceable special agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs. He had a cool head, a sharp gaze, and a strange past. This year, though, Harmon is going through some changes that make people look twice. Let's just say that his time in the show business hasn't been the smoothest. We'll learn everything you didn't know in this movie. Of course, you need to know about Harmon's great journey and the latest news about him that has everyone guessing. Follow Mark Harmon's path to becoming a big star on NCIS. Do you agree that Mark Harmon's rise to fame is one of those great stories that seems almost by chance? In the 1970s, Harmon took a big risk by leaving a job that seemed safe in business to become an actor, where things could go in any direction. In a funny little ad for Kellogg's Product 19 cereal, he shared screen time with his father and got his first taste of fame. It wasn't on a big stage or a movie set. He didn't just get there by luck, though. In the beginning of his acting career, his sister Kristen was very helpful. She used her connections to help him get his first part in an episode of Ozzy's Girls. Talk about how to help your family. Harmon went on to guest star on a number of popular shows in 1975, including Adam 12, Policewoman, and Emergency. That first chance set off a chain reaction. What was he thinking when he made those public appearances? Did he ever think about how far he would go? Mark Harmon's life seems to have taken a bad turn after years of being in the press, and fans want to know what's really going on. Does the story have more to it than we think? The news wasn't what anyone expected, with health problems and sudden changes in careers. Please stay tuned until the very end, as what is happening to Mark right now is shocking and sad. Harmon's talent started to shine through more clearly as his work went on. For his riveting role in the TV movie Eleanor and Franklin, The White House Years, he was nominated for an Emmy. Really interesting how one part can make an actor famous in a whole new way, right? As a result, he got parts in well-known shows like Centennial and small roles in movies like Comes a Horseman and Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. Every job he worked on seemed to add another piece to the puzzle of his growing career, bringing him closer to something big. Then came 2003, a year that would change Harmon's life for good. He was chosen to play the tough special agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs in the groundbreaking TV show NCIS. It's funny how an actor's big break often happens when they least expect it. This chance came up after Donald P. Bellisario, who created both JAG and NCIS, saw Harmon's powerful performance in The West Wing as Secret Service agent Simon Donovan. It's almost like fate pushed Bellisario to ask him to be a guest star in a couple of JAG shows where Gibbs was first seen. Did he know at that time that he was taking on a part that would become famous? Most likely not. But it wasn't easy to play Gibbs. It came with its own problems. Harmon had to deal with Gibbs' complicated personality, combining his tough, no-nonsense exterior with the deep compassion and commitment to justice that lay beneath. How do you even begin to understand how complicated that is? Harmon knew that he had to give Gibbs more meaning as he took over the role, because the character was so important to both the show and its loyal fans. Harmon's time working as a police officer helped him understand how an experienced NCIS agent works. But Gibbs' backstory, a sad story about how he lost his wife and child, gave the story extra emotional weight that Harmon needed to make believable. How does someone show such deep sadness while still keeping up the tough exterior that fans have come to expect? Even though there were problems, Harmon's performance moved people. He worked hard and was honest, which helped make NCIS a culture phenomenon. Doesn't it amaze you how an actor can change the course of a show and even their own career by shaping a character? Through its ups and downs, Mark Harmon's journey shows how perseverance, ability, and a little luck can pay off, encouraging us all to remember that the way to success isn't always easy. That sounds like a story that everyone would want to read. Things have become very difficult for Mark Harmon all of a sudden. After years of being stable and successful, what could be causing these new problems, and how does he deal with them all? There's more to this story than just the title. It's about an actor whose fans love him very much. Watch all the way through, because the new information about Mark Harmon's position is really shocking. How Gibbs' personality has changed over time. Over the course of 19 seasons, Leroy Jethro Gibbs went from being a tough and quiet boss to having one of the most complex personalities in TV history. I can only think how hard it must be to change when millions of fans are always watching. At first glance, Gibbs seemed like a simple person, the kind of tough, quiet person that many people can relate to. Not until the third season did we learn about the sad history of his first wife Shannon and their daughter Kelly. This moment did more than just show how complex Gibbs is as a person. It helped explain his careful behavior and made people think about the question: how does someone deal with such a huge loss and still have to work in a high-stakes setting like NCIS? As the seasons went on, Gibbs' ties with his team became more important, showing how well he could teach and lead those around him. His growth into a father figure for many, especially agents like Tony Donaso and Ziva David, as well as the always weird forensic specialist Abby Pseudo, made the team feel like a family. It's interesting to think about how a simple action, like his famous head slap, which started out as a jokey way to scold Donaso, turned into something that defined him. What are some other little things that can help you understand someone and their relationships over time? Gibbs' character arc was strengthened by important plot points. One of the most important was learning about his family's sad death, and his desire for revenge against Pedro Hernandez for killing his family. Imagine keeping a secret like that for years and then accidentally telling everyone about it when Abby found proof that Gibbs was responsible for Hernandez's death. What would that make you feel about yourself? Gibbs is so approachable because he struggles with guilt and the desire for justice, which is something that many people go through in their own lives, though in different ways. Gibbs' battle with his past and the well-known rules he made to honor Shannon became central to who he was as a person and as a leader. But here's the catch. Gibbs learned over time that it's okay to break or bend your own rules sometimes. Isn't that a new and interesting point of view? Adapting is a big part of growing, and Gibbs did a great job of showing that throughout the series. How he interacted with the other people on the NCIS team was also very important to his growth. In the case of Tony Donaso, the relationship between him and his mentee slowly grew into a close, almost family one. Why is the connection between a mentor and mentee unique? Many watchers felt that Gibbs and Tony's relationship showed mutual respect, trust, and growth. With Abby, the bond was one of a kind. When they talked to each other using sign language, it showed that they understood and cared about each other beyond just being professionals. She was like a daughter to Gibbs, which made his already complicated personality even more interesting. Gibbs changed the way he led as new agents like Timothy McGee and Ziva David joined the team. This showed that he wasn't just a strict rule follower, but a creative leader who could help people grow. How often do we see people who won't change? Gibbs is very strong because he was able to change while staying true to his beliefs. Behind the scenes, things are tense on the NCIS set. Fans loved how well Mark Harmon and Polly Perrette worked together on TV, but things got tense when they weren't with each other. One event in particular caused a stir. Something went wrong with Harmon's dog, which bit a team member because it seemed a little too excited about the shooting. That bite needed 15 stitches, and as you might guess, it didn't go over well with anyone, especially Perrette. She had said she was worried about having Harmon's dog around, and she was right. Safety first, right? But things got worse when CBS had to step in and ban the furry friend from the set. Harmon wasn't happy with this choice. That made a big split between him and Perrette that was hard to deal with. They couldn't even film scenes together during Perrette's last season because of how tense things got. Do you believe it? They didn't film their parts together instead. The production team had to put everything together to keep the quality of the show high. Harmon had 2 jobs since 2008. He was both the lead actor and the chief producer. This made things even more complicated. It's like putting on 2 hats. Because they had such a big say in how the show went, they sometimes had creative disagreements with the directors and writers. Harmon was seen as a true professional, but some crew members thought there could have been better contact. When creative minds don't work together, something has to give. It was only normal for people to get angry on set, and keeping things calm was a real challenge. Even with all the trouble, it's interesting to see how highly Harmon was still regarded by many group members. Actor Sean Murray, who plays Timothy McGee, and actor Brian Dietzen, who plays Jimmy Palmer, both praised him as a helpful boss and teacher. Harmon clearly cared about making the workplace a good place to be, even when things were getting tense. Being the face of the show and taking care of production needs was a lot for him, but he still tried to make a place where everyone could do well. Harmon has been talking more about the problems that happened on set in recent years. He says that they were unfortunate, but that the cast and crew were able to move on properly. Fans are worried about Mark Harmon because he is having problems and things seem to be getting worse. What is going on with the star who has been in a lot of movies for years? This isn't just another top story. The most current news tells us a lot about what he's going through. Wait until the end, because what Mark Harmon is really going through might shock you. Mark Harmon's choice to quit NCIS. Let's look into the interesting story of why Mark Harmon quit NCIS, a choice that made fans very happy and had a big effect on the show itself. Picture yourself in Harmon's shoes after playing the popular agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs for almost 20 years. That's a lot of times to play the same role, right? The main reason for making this choice? Weakness. Is it your fault? Harmon felt the weight of those long days on set, which could last up to 22 hours in the early seasons. He was getting close to 70 years old. He worked hard for years on a single part, and had a busy production schedule that was hard on his body and mind. It makes sense that he wanted to take a break and enjoy a well-earned retirement. After giving Gibbs so much of himself, wouldn't you agree that it's important to put personal time first, especially with family? Harmon had been hints for a few seasons that he was leaving, specifically around the 15th or 16th season. But his deep devotion to the cast and crew, which was like being close to family, kept him tied to the show longer than he had planned. It's a tough spot, right? Choosing between personal wants and loyalty to a popular show and its cast. While Harmon thought about leaving, he was in talks with CBS and the show's directors. Think about what they must have talked about. Harmon agreed to be in a few episodes at the beginning of the 19th season so that the show could continue without any problems. It was like putting a safety net around the show. The network was able to feel confident about the show's future without its longtime lead actor during the transition era. Sometimes you pass the baton to the next person, but you want to make sure they are ready to go. Kelly Call, head of CBS Entertainment, even told fans that Harmon would always be a part of the show. Basically, it means that the door was left wide open for him to come back in some way. Then comes the really fun part, making plans for Gibbs' exit. People who worked on the show wanted to give fans who had cared so much about Gibbs and the character a good ending. At the end of season 19's fourth episode, Great Wide Open Gibbs decided to stay in Alaska permanently. Isn't that a touching way to say goodbye to a character? It gave Gibbs a break from the high-stakes world of NCIS and a sense of peace and satisfaction. Harmon himself thought that this ending was honest and right for Gibbs' story. It's all about the character's growth, right? Harmon liked that the character had taken a real road that was similar to his own. Even more interesting is the fact that Gibbs isn't really retired. This means that he could come back or be a part of future stories, which would have an effect on the show's finances. First, let's talk about how Mark Harmon's leaving NCIS affected the show, especially in terms of its budget and production. Harmon was the show's heartbeat as Leroy Jethro Gibbs for almost 20 years. How much does he make? It was not a small matter. There were reports that he was making more than $500,000 per show. Do you really believe that? There's a big chunk of money there. Because of this, when he chose to leave, the whole financial structure of NCIS had to be looked at again. Without Harmon's big salary eating up a lot of the cash, the producers were in a tough spot. How do they keep the show going while keeping it good and keeping people interested? Also, let's not forget the artistic chaos that happened after he left. Since Gibbs was going, the production team had to get to work and rewrite scripts, coming up with new stories that would keep people watching week after week. It's not enough to just say goodbye to a figure. It's about coming up with new and interesting ways to tell the story. That time of transition wasn't just a small problem. Everyone had to use a lot of tools and come up with creative ideas. There must have been a lot of what-if scenarios going around in those late-night talks and brainstorming sessions. Would they add a new character to make up for it? How could they get the show's spirit across without Gibbs? Even with these problems, NCIS was able to stay on the air for a long time. It was safe because it had a strong group cast and had been popular for a long time. As you can see, the show has been making a lot of money through syndication. You can watch reruns on cable stations on the weekends and holidays. Who doesn't enjoy a series of NCIS while they're couch-bound? That steady stream of income has been a lifesaver, making up for any losses that might have happened because Harmon quit. If you switch gears and look at Harmon's pay talks over the years, things get very different. In the first few seasons, Mark Harmon and the rest of the group worked long hours, sometimes up to 22 hours a day, to make NCIS a must-see show. That shows commitment. Harmon's negotiating power went through the roof as the show gained popularity and became a mainstay of CBS television. At that point, who wouldn't want to be him? His pay went up as the number of watchers did. By the end of the show's run, Harmon was one of the best paid stars on TV. Can you picture how proud he must have been? It's not easy to make over $500,000 per show. It wasn't just because he was a good actor, it was because of how important he was to the brand. Also, let's not forget that he has been an executive director since 2008. This double job helped him a lot when he was negotiating his salary, giving him an edge and a reason to want the show to do well. When Harmon began to think about going, things took a change. As he tried to get the show renewed for a 19th season, his talks changed direction. As part of the deal, he agreed to be in a certain number of shows. You should really play your cards right. This plan made the change more gradual, making it easier for both the cast and team to get used to NCIS without Gibbs, while keeping their finances stable during such a big change. The mix of planning and showmanship is very interesting. Who knew that the world of TV could be so complicated? In the end, Harmon's leaving wasn't just a change in the company. It was a turning point that forced the people who made the show to come up with new ideas and change. Many people have always liked Mark Harmon, but recent events have made them wonder what's really going on. From failures to personal problems, his journey is going in a strange new direction. What's making everyone so worried, and how will this affect his future? Watch this video all the way through because it will leave you with more questions than answers about Mark Harmon's problems. How fans felt about Harmon's leaving. People's feelings on social media exploded like a volcano when Mark Harmon said he was leaving NCIS. And it was like seeing a friend tell you they were leaving after living next door for years. A lot of fans took to social media sites like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to talk about how they felt about what would happen with Gibbs and their favorite show. While acknowledging Harmon's very busy schedule, some fans, filled with nostalgia and gratitude, say how much they appreciate his nearly 20-year commitment to the series. As word got out, it was clear that Harmon's leaving would have a big impact on how many people watched NCIS. Many people really like the show, but some fans have said they will not watch it anymore without Gibbs in charge. One fan said, "If Gibbs is gone, so am I. I'm a big fan of McGee and have loved seeing his character grow over the years." But Gibbs is NCIS. How many of us have felt that way when our favorite characters from a show left? Many fans said the same thing on social media, noting that the show wouldn't feel the same without Harmon's famous character. A lot of tributes and goodbye messages came in, like an album of emotional tributes. Fans liked how Mark Harmon played Leroy Jethro Gibbs and wrote about it on social media. A lot of people told him how much they appreciated his 18-year effort. Even though everything was terrible, there was a glimmer of hope. Some fans were still hopeful that Gibbs would come back because the show's makers left the door open for him to make more appearances. When you say goodbye to a friend, you know that they might surprise you by showing up at any time. People are getting used to the show's new lead as it moves forward without its longtime star. Surprisingly, some people are even liking new characters, like Agent Parker, played by Gary Cole. How interesting is it that shows can change over time while still having the same core that drew us in at the start? The fact that NCIS is still popular after Harmon left shows how appealing it is and how well it can change. Even though Gibbs' death is very sad, the show has shown that it can keep the flame alive, like a nice fire that stays warm even after the logs are switched out. Even though fans are sad, they are still hopeful, which shows how much they love NCIS. It's not just a show. For years, it has stayed connected with its audience, changing with them and finding new ways to stay true to its roots. When we think about NCIS's future, we can't help but wonder what the next part of the popular series will bring. Will new people make us fall in love with them like Gibbs did? One thing is certain: we will find the answers. Mark Harmon will always be remembered as an important part of NCIS history. Many problems in my life over the years. Mark Harmon has had a lot of personal problems over the course of his work that have really tested his strength and character. In 1987, he was involved in a very public and nasty custody battle over his nephew Sam. This was one of the most important events in his life. Now picture yourself in his place, watching your sister Kristen deal with drug abuse. Seeing it must have been heartbreaking, right? Harmon made the very hard choice to file for custody of Sam because he was worried and felt very responsible. Some bad things happened because of this choice. The Harmon family was pretty much split down the middle by it. Mark stood on one side with his sister Kelly, their parents, and Mark. On the other side, Kristen was by herself. It's a big mental weight, right? After putting up with the fighting in the family, Harmon decided to drop the custody suit. He wanted to end the fighting and bring some peace back to the family. Going forward to 1996, Harmon's bravery became clear in a very different way. He found himself in a movie-like situation when he had to free two teens who were stuck in a Jeep that had been in a terrible accident near his home. Can you picture how pumped up he must have been as he used a 12-pound sledgehammer to smash the windshield? The bravery of the person who did it probably amazed a lot of people, especially since the car was about to blow up. In fact, the Los Angeles Fire Department praised him for what he did. Spokesman Brian Humphrey said that Harmon's quick thought and bravery saved the teens' lives. What's interesting about this event, though, is how Harmon played down his part in it. He said in an interview in 2013 that he wouldn't take credit for it because if the car blows up with him next to it, two young boys will not have a father. Isn't it nice to see someone who's both successful and grounded? Things have been hard for Harmon in more than just his personal life. Of course, he's also had his share of problems at work. In 2007, he got into a fight with Donald P. Belisario, the author of NCIS, over how the show was being run, which caused tension. Harmon told the network about his worries, which led to Belisario's firing and the arrival of a new showrunner. Harmon told USA Today, "This is a hard thing to do when everything is going right." He was thinking about these big changes. We're better organized now that we've made changes. It's interesting how he turned a bad situation into a chance to make things better. This shows how dedicated he is to not only his part, but also the whole production. Harmon's view on life and work has definitely been changed by these different events. A lot of the time, he talks about how important it is to find strength in hard times and keep a learning attitude, especially when things get tough. Harmon is getting close to his mid-70s. and it's inspiring to see how he keeps going with his long-running Hollywood job. He stays out of the spotlight the whole time, putting his family ahead of all the fame and attention. Mark Harmon's luck isn't looking good, and people all over the world are beginning to worry. What's going on with the popular NCIS star who has won our hearts for decades? From current events to problems that no one saw coming, the whole story is more surprising than anyone could have thought. Don't leave until the very end, because shocking new information about Mark's life is about to come out. Mark Harmon is not having a good time. Mark Harmon is still making a big splash in the entertainment business, even though he left NCIS in 2021. And it's really cool to watch how he handles this new part of his life. Mark Harmon has found new ways to stay connected to the brand that made him famous, even though things aren't going well for him in 2024. Think about being a part of something so famous that fans will always love and appreciate you, even after you're gone. Harmon is going to be back in NCIS, but this time in a different role. Fans of the long-running show are very excited about this. In an exciting change of events, Harmon will be the narrator and executive producer for the new CBS show NCIS Origins, which premiered on October 14th, 2024. The unique thing about this predecessor is that it will go into great detail about the past of Leroy Jethro Gibbs, the character who made Harmon famous. Can you imagine going back in time to see how such a popular character grew up? Fans are sure to find it interesting to see how Gibbs lived as a young agent behind the scenes. The story will begin in 1991, right after Gibbs' wife and child were tragically killed. It promises to be a darker and tougher take on the NCIS world that fans know and love. Anyway, it's a shame that Harmon won't be appearing on screen as often, but he's not leaving the action totally. He has a special role planned for the first episode of the show. That's really cool. It was even revealed by co-showrunner David J. North that new Harmon footage was shot just for this prequel. But here's the catch. They are not letting anyone know any juicy information about his cameo. Why doesn't that make you want to stay on the edge of your seat? Austin Stowell will play the young Gibbs in this show, which should be interesting on its own. In a sweet turn of events, Harmon's son Sean Harmon will be working with his dad as an executive producer. It's so touching to see a family tradition grow in such a lively way. Harmon isn't just stopping at NCIS though. Origins, he's also dabbled in writing. In November 2023, he wrote a book with NCIS technical aide Leon Carroll Jr. called A Japanese-American Spy Hunter. The Untold Story of Pearl Harbor. This isn't just any book, it's a history account based on their time on NCIS that delves into the fascinating world of Japanese and American spies during World War II. Harmon is doing amazing things that are outside of NCIS while still respecting his work there, isn't it? Mark Harmon may not have a lot of good luck in 2024, but he is still open to new opportunities in the NCIS series. Even though he doesn't appear on screen very often, his work behind the scenes shows how much he still affects the show he helped create. As fans eagerly await the start of NCIS and Harmon's new book, one can't help but wonder, what else could this skilled actor work up in the future that will surprise us? In the entertainment business, there are a lot of options, and Mark Harmon is a very creative person, so who knows what exciting paths he might take next. This is the end of the movie. Thanks for seeing. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to get more. Click on the movie that comes up next to read more exciting stories.